¿Cómo se dice mariposa en inglés?
You say lift or elevator.
¿Seguro?
Of course, you see. Both go floor to floor.
Para fiestas y posadas. In this video, I will be talking about the difference between Spanish and Castilian. What is the difference between Spanish and Castilian? The short answer is absolutely nothing. They're synonyms. But let me go ahead and explain. So, if we look at Spain, well, this is the Iberian Peninsula, and then Spain would be the larger portion. You have Portugal right here. Castilian began near the region of Navarra, right over here, near areas of Arredondo, for example, those areas around there, and then eventually it spread through Spain, especially through the Reconquest, La Reconquista, and eventually, well, we have Castile here in the middle. That became, well, the language of Castile. Why? Because we speak the Queen's language. That's the reason why. So Queen Isabella of Castile, the Catholic Queen, that was her language. She was the Queen of Castile. She's the one that financed Columbus's voyages, for example. So that's 1492. Columbus sails the ocean blue. And with that, eventually colonies were established in the American continent, 1507 in the Caribbean. I mean, Hernan Cortez starts making history around 1547. And with these colonies, Spain exports a language, and that language is Castilian. And it's a language because in the Spains, right, what we now consider Spain here in the peninsula, it used to be plural, the Spains, las Españas, there are many languages that belong to Spain as we know it today as a country. So, for example, Gallego, Catalan, Euskera, the Basque language. And if you think of like Gallego, Catalan, these are also Romance languages, and Gallego is only spoken in Spain. So if we say, for example, do you speak Spanish? Are we referring to that as being a Spanish language? I mean, it is a Spanish language. Are we referring to Basque? Basque has nothing to do with Romance languages. It would be an Iberian language pre-Roman time, and then Celtic Iberian later on, and then to what it is now. Therefore, whenever we're referring to Spanish, the language that we're referring to is actually Castilian, because Castilian is the only language from Spain that was exported in mass outside of Spain. No other Spanish language or language within the Spanish boundaries was exported in mass. To put it into perspective, I will make a comparison with English. So if we look at Great Britain, for example, this right over here, we have Ireland, the northern part, which I still wonder why. We have England, Wales, Scotland, right? The language that was exported in mass was English. That is why we have English in the United States, Canada, Australia, and many places, right? Where most people speak English in the United States, Canada, Australia, and many other places. So saying I speak Castilian would be the equivalent of saying I speak English, because English is the language. Notice Gaelic was not exported in mass. Now saying I speak Spanish would be equivalent to saying I speak British. Why? Because English was the imperial language. So as the empire expanded, well, it took the language with it, and that was the language that was taken with the empire, or that is the language that was used when the empire was built. Therefore, saying I speak Castilian or I speak Spanish are both equivalent. Now, something to keep in mind is languages have many dialects, and in the field of linguistics, a dialect is simply any variation of a language. It has nothing to do with it being correct or incorrect. It's just a variation. So, for example, let's just say you say garage versus garage. Those are two different dialects. They're both considered correct. If you say, I don't know, cilantro versus coriander, take your pick. They're variances. And if you look at the United States, for example, there are many variations of English depending on where you go. Just go coast to coast. If you go to England, for example, different parts, just go from London to Liverpool, for example, and there are different variants as well. So this is something to keep in mind. I mean, nobody goes around asking somebody from the United States, oh, do you speak English? Oh, yes, I speak English. Oh, do you speak British English or American English? Or do you speak English or American English? Nobody does that. Yet, it's very interesting that many monolinguals or sometimes, say, English speakers or individuals whose first language is English who have perhaps learned some Spanish or no Spanish might ask somebody from Mexico or somebody of Mexican descent in the United States, do you speak any of the languages? Oh, you speak Spanish. Is it Spain Spanish or Mexican Spanish? Because Mexican Spanish is not real Castilian. This is usually done to denigrate the way that Mexicans speak. That's really all it is. And the reason why some of them will point at the lisp, well, you should be speaking with a lisp. No, you should not. And the reason why is what is considered the lisp, and there's another video for that, that didn't exist until the colonies were already established, at least 100 years. Therefore, when Castilian was exported, there was no such thing as a lisp. So claiming that Mexicans do not speak proper Castilian because they don't lisp isn't a valid argument because the lisp didn't exist. That's a Spanish creation. Very creative they are. So those are some of the things to keep in mind. So if you go to Spain and you ask somebody, do you speak Spanish? Well, what do you mean by that? Do you mean a language of Spain, such as Gallego, Catalan, Basque, within the Spanish territory? Or are you referring to Castilian? You're probably referring to Castilian. Same thing in Spanish-speaking America. So Hispanic America. Now, long time ago, if you looked for a grammar book, you would not find a grammar book in Spanish-speaking countries titled Spanish Grammar or Grammar of the Spanish Language. It would be Castilian Grammar or Grammar of the Castilian Language. Nowadays, you will find Spanish Grammar or Grammar of the Spanish Language as well. Why? Because those terms are interchangeable. Because once again, the only language from Spain that was exported en masse was Spanish. Therefore, if somebody says, I speak Spanish or I speak Castilian, they're really referring to the same thing. Well, this being said, thank you very much, and I'll catch you in the next one.